Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm here to give you some brief details about the financial position of the University of Wisconsin-Superior from what I was able to gather during my interviews as well as my understanding as an employee. University of Wisconsin-Superior is a unique, small, public, liberal arts comprehensive university located in northwestern Wisconsin and has an FTE enrollment of about 2,400 students across in-person traditional undergraduate programs, graduate programs, and online undergraduate and graduate programs. On campus, there are roughly 1,600 students that attend undergraduate and graduate courses on the physical campus. UWS is one of the oldest of the UW system schools and is about to celebrate its 125th birthday. UWS is also the smallest of the 13 universities across the system, so financial decision-making has most significant impact on this campus. UW Superior's 2016-17 budget is roughly $72 million, with over $18 million of it going back to students in the form of aid. Just short of $31 million is spent on wages and benefits, and the same amount is incurred in program revenue through tuition dollars. The individual breakdown of this can be found online. Through this presentation, I'm going to cover the following: analyzing the funding structure and revenue sources of the university, determining the spending areas of the university, how the university can enhance the funding sources for the future, and how to prioritize funding for the future. I will also share with you some additional reading should you want to learn more. Since this is just a very short presentation, I will not be able to go massively in depth with these different points, but it is enough for you to have a strong understanding of the position of UW Superior. For the purposes of this presentation, I spoke to two colleagues of mine, the controller for the campus as well as the administrative specialist in our finance and operations department. I also spoke with one of the foundation representatives. The uniqueness of being a public institution as part of a state system is that a lot of financial details of the university are available online in the UW System Red Book. For this presentation's brief nature, I have not provided details from the Red Book because it is both significant in detail beyond the scope of this talk, but it is also available freely online. When examining how funding is structured, particularly in a place like UW Superior, you find a lot of funding purpose dissonance. Lombardi explained that this is how faculty rarely see their teaching and research loads as related to dollars and cents, and that students take classes towards majors but rarely consider the day-to-day costs associated with those academic pursuits. Particularly in the UW system, there is a tuition cost plateau, meaning enrollment costs are the same for a group and number of credits regardless of how many you take or in what department. Similarly, faculty rarely consider their costs associated with teaching as a whole, as they teach courses in their discipline of mastery to the students who are enrolled. More often recently, especially since the funding changes in 2015, UW System and UW Superior students, faculty, and staff are much more keenly aware of the financial contributions to the university. As Lombardi and Rober and Meadows so aptly pointed out, faculty rarely consider the cost of teaching or scholarship services, but are very often vocal about wages and cost of living increases. Specifically at UW Superior, most faculty and staff have not experienced any cost of living increase since 2010, and in the meanwhile, insurance and retirement contributions have increased. Therefore, this funding dissonance of purpose is most real when many realize they make less money now than they did 8 years ago. Another concern Lombardi shares resonates within UW Superior. Does the allocation of funds to certain efforts actually achieve the goals set forth? For example, significant funds have been set aside over the last 5 years for supporting undergraduate research and scholarship for students and faculty. One would posit that this significant pot of money would help yield higher student success, faculty productivity, and thus increase retention and graduation numbers. However, the data is unclear if those high-impact practices at UW Superior actually reinforce and reach those previously stated financial goals. Additionally, when analyzing the funding structure of the university, there is significant difficult push-pull relationships between funding teaching efforts of faculty and funding their research and scholarship efforts. For a teaching university such as UW Superior, faculty are hired and typically placed on a 4-4 teaching load for each academic year. Evaluation and retention portfolios and then tenure portfolios are examined for other areas of contribution to the university, such as service to the profession and campus community, publications and presentations, scholarly pursuits, but the primary funding and time of efforts for the university are teaching activities with undergraduate students. Finally, Understanding the political environment for funding is very important at UW-Superior. Currently, UW system has experienced the largest state allocation cuts that has occurred in its 45-year history. The current governor, along with legislature, is essentially working to downsize and underfund significant portions of the higher education system, not unlike what is happening across the country. Specific funding cuts are being made that impact UW-Superior in the following ways. A recent, end of October 2017, need to suspend over 30 program majors and minors indefinitely. Hiring freezes for several faculty and staff positions, no cost of living increases for faculty and staff, increasing tuition without a similar increase in financial aid, cuts in work-study dollars, and an all-but-complete standstill on capital improvement projects. This is a significant and dire situation for UW-Superior and UW system. From my conversations with the employees, I learned one consistent theme. What is revenue is also spending at public institutions. Revenue cannot be considered more than spending in UW system because these monies are then demanded back by UW system. Very little is allowed for holdbacks from year to year, and the university must operate as closely to a zero-based budget as possible. The UW system Red Book, which details each of the 13 campus budgets, can be found online. There are 23 different revenue and spending categories for UW-Superior. At UW-Superior, there is a university advancement arm that engages in fundraising and support. Although quite small, the foundation is a considerable revenue source for the university, especially when considering student scholarship support. Through my personal communications with both the controller and the director of university advancement, it was shared with me that the vast majority of past dollars that have been collected as revenue have been towards two areas: student scholarship support and university capital projects. With the recent opening of both Swenson Hall and the Yellow Jacket Union, significant naming opportunities through financial support were received as revenue. One of the most unique aspects of UW system is the amount of segregated fees that come into the system. These fees are voted on and adjusted by the Student Government Association. Within my discussion with the controller and administrative specialist, this can go as low as a few dollars to support certain efforts on campus, such as wireless access points, student counseling services, etc., or go as large as several $100s to support student printing costs, student affairs department functions, etc. Segregated fees are a very contentious point for some at UW-Superior and most UW system campuses. More information can be found online. Grants and contracts for some universities are a massive amount of money. For UW-Superior, there are 4 major research institutes across the campus that are all developed within the last decade. These research centers house several federal, state, and local grants and contribute massively to the local economy and regional understanding. Smaller grants and contracts exist within the English as a Second Language Institute, Testing Services, the Center for Community Engaged Learning, and other such efforts. These not only bring in money to the institution as a revenue source, but they also allow for spending of these resources back into the university. Obviously, one would be remiss not to mention the role that tuition plays at UW-Superior. With state support down to around 20% for tuition, students rely heavily at UW-Superior on loans, aids, and grants. UW-Superior has a significant proportion of first-generation students at nearly 50%, underrepresented minorities at 9%, and disabled students. TRIO Student Support Services grants bring in nearly $600,000 worth of support and grants for scholarships for underserved students, and federal and state aid dollars contribute in a massive way. Tuition remains the same low as compared to other institutions. A significant cost or spending area at UW-Superior is our debt service, as explained by Lombardi. All projects at UW-Superior, not unlike other UW system facility projects, are done through a long-term debt management process for 20, 30, or 40 years. Each fiscal year results in the university paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt service back to the state and to UW system for the assistance, not unlike a mortgage. Because UW-Superior is considered a small university, the budget dollars are doled out in a very specific way. Looking at how to enhance funding into the future, prioritizing spending is a challenging endeavor. Integrated planning models, as noted by Andaris, are becoming more popular at universities to be able to spread information and fiscal wealth across units in the planning process. In some states, more power is being accorded to boards of regions to be able to actively engage with individual campuses in the financial planning process. One would assume this to occur in UW-Superior into the future. One of the methods to enhance funding for the future is to develop new programs that bring new and different revenue to UW-Superior. In any environment where 30-plus majors and minors were just suspended, it can be challenging to think about expansion and new revenue when so many programs were essentially ended. However, academic departments, as well as functional service departments, are being encouraged to think about new funding sources and how to prioritize those in the future. Naturally, expanding graduate and online programs is a major priority. Discussions about new master's programs are a conversation, as well as moving programs to an online format. Advancement is currently in the silent stages of a capital campaign over the next 5 years to raise $20 million for capital projects, student scholarships, and program development. This would significantly impact our university. There is some effort towards moving the university from a zero-based budget model that is housed centrally within the administrative officer and controller to a responsibility-centered management model as described by Lombardi. This model shift would allow for individual programs to be less in the push-pull mode of our current budget model. Additionally, conversations have begun about engaging in performance or incentive-based budgeting models to help push innovation and revenue generation programs and support services for campus. This model, as Rubber and Meadows and Andaris noted, can help boost productivity on campuses significantly. Right now, auxiliary functions are enacted in the form of residence halls, campus dining, and some portions of health services. Expanding those auxiliaries or the services available within the auxiliaries is up for discussion. There is significant challenge with conversation, though there is little expansion due to declining enrollment. As you can see in this very brief presentation, there are considerable challenges currently at UW-Superior, and a forecast of much of the same into the near and mid-range future. Existing in a system that is rapidly deteriorating at the hands of the political infrastructure of the state, along with the compression of the two-year colleges into the four-year university system, a declining new direct from high school population throughout the upper Midwest, and challenging programming costs make for a difficult environment for both educational and financial perspectives. Many difficult conversations are being had about the academic and financial future of UW-Superior as it positions itself within the larger UW system. The current funding structure continues to be strained by cuts and program declines or suspensions, and revenue sources are declining as expected. The university must identify and immediately enact new revenue sources that provide for a sustainable and prioritized future. At this point, I will take any questions or comments that you have related to my information here. And I also invite you to take a look at these references for additional reading as you are interested.